What's going on, guys? Damien Hyde here. Today I'm going to show you how to put a bottom bracket into a frame. To start off with, I will say don't bash your bottom bracket into your frame using a random object. I know the pros do it. That's fine, they're sponsored, they get new bearings when there's break. You don't. You go and hammer your bearing into your frame wrong, you can destroy it instantly. Otherwise you're actually just, decreasing the lifespan of it. So don't bash your bearing into your frame. Instead, make a tool like I did. I'll show you what it looks like. It'll cost you $5 to $10 to make, and you can use it to press bearings into your frame whenever you want. So I'll set up the frame on the desk behind me here. I've got the bottom bracket and the tool already there, so yeah, let's see how we go. Okay guys, so to start off with, this is the tool I made. It's like a bearing press. I just made it from a bunch of bolts and washers and things from the hardware store. So I'll undo it first and show you how I made it, and then we can go from there. So to start off with, you want a bolt and a nut. I've used galvanized, doesn't really matter. It's cheaper to use galv than stainless steel, so find whatever you want and run with that. I'll put the specs on the screen of how long this bolt is and everything, so you can go and buy the same sort of thing if you want. Basically, you want a bolt long enough that's going to fit through the bottom bracket, plus a little bit extra for the bearings because they haven't been pressed into the frame yet. So, bolt, nut. Obviously we need something to press into the frame, so what I've got here is a couple of big galvanized washers. Just a couple of big square galvanized washers, hole in the middle, nothing special. I did get some washers, so I'm going to put a washer either side, just like that, and then put everything together. So before we get to that, you'll also see that I've put Velcro on this side of the washer. That's just to give it a nice soft surface to press the bearing into the frame, just so you don't damage the bearings or anything like that. Also, when you're pressing downhill bottom brackets or mountain bike bottom brackets into frames, they actually have a slightly different system, so you'll end up damaging your bottom bracket if you don't put Velcro on it. Anyway, two of those, two washers, one bolt, one nut, and this is how it goes. So, bolt, small washer, and you're going to have your plate, your large square washer with your Velcro on it. And then on this side we're going to put another washer, the big square washer, a smaller washer, that's going to go on with the nut. But before we do that, we obviously need to get the bearings out that we need to press into the frame, and we need to put this through the frame as well. So let's move on to that. So here I have the Odyssey mid bottom bracket. I'm running a 19mm spindle on the crankset that I've bought, so just bear in mind that there is different sizes depending on the crankset that you've bought. That number there is in relation to the diameter of the inside of the bearings. So let's open this bag, see what parts Odyssey have given us. Interesting to see that they don't give you stickers anymore, which is not really cool. Right. Right, so inside the packaging from Odyssey, you get two mid-bottom bracket bearings. These press directly into the frame, so what we're going to do is we're going to grease the inside of the bottom bracket so that these slide in nicely and they don't seize in there, so you can remove them when it's destroyed sometime in the future. They also give you a non-drive side spacer. It looks nice. And then they also give you spaces for the drive side, being the side the sprocket's on. So there's four spaces there. And that's to make sure that you get your chain line from your sprocket perfectly in line with your cassette. Otherwise you're going to have your chain jumping off your sprocket and all sorts of fun stuff like that. And the last thing you get is this spacer here. Now don't listen to people like Adam LZ that say you don't need this. You don't theoretically need it your crank will still work, but it is definitely worth putting this in, because what it does is it stops your bearings from being preloaded in the frame. When I say preloaded, if you can imagine these two bearings are in your bottom bracket without that spacer in it, and you tighten your crank as hard as you can, what's going to happen? The two insides of the bearings in here are going to push inwards, and they're going to load the inside of the bearing up, and then it's actually just going to mince out the bearings. It's going to be too much pressure on it. So what that spacer does, is it sits on that lip there, and you can tighten your crank as hard as you want, and those bearings are never going to get closer together than that spacer. Don't have the spacer, insides of the bearings move closer together, preload the bearings, you destroy them a lot sooner. Don't listen to people that say you shouldn't put that in. Right, so I've run through the tool, I've run through the bottom bracket components. Now I'm going to grease the bottom bracket, and then I'll show you how to put everything together to compress the bearing into the frame. Right, so now that we've run through all the components, being the homemade bearing press and the bottom bracket components, I'm now going to assemble everything and put it in the bottom bracket here. So to start off with, I'm just going to take a little bit of grease here, just like so, just a tiny bit there, and then I'm going to run it around where the bearings are going to sit into the bottom bracket. This is just to prevent the bottom bracket from seizing in there over time, and then when you go to get it out in the future, it'll be locked in there and it'll be a pain in the ass to get out. So a little bit of grease in there, nothing too crazy, just enough to give everything a light coating. Right, so once you've done that, it's time to assemble everything on your homemade bearing press, and away we go. So it needs to go in order of things that are going to be pressed into the frame. So here we have the bolt with the big washer with the Velcro on it already. You're going to stick one bearing on, then you're going to put on the bearing sleeve. You're then going to stick that into the frame, and then you're going to stick the other bearing on the other side once it's in the frame, because it's going to go on the other side of the bottom bracket, and then you're going to put the other big washer, the small washer, and the bolt on the other side. So I'll move the camera around and show you what it looks like while it's going into the frame. So on the bolt I've got the small washer, the big washer, and the bearing, and that's about to go into the frame. So we go through like so, then we need to put the spacer in, it goes in the middle of the bottom bracket. Then we've got the other bearing, which goes on the other side. Then we've got the other big washer with the Velcro, it's going to go against there. Small washer, and the bolt. And basically we're just going to quickly do that nut up until we get it close to being snug. And then what you want to do is you just want to make sure that your bearings are lined up perfectly into your frame before you start tightening anything. Otherwise, if things go in unevenly, it's going to start getting ugly. So everything's looking pretty good there. Just tighten this nut a little bit more. So when you get to that point, basically what you want to do is you want to make sure that this shaft is in the very middle of the bearings. That way when you start tightening everything, it perfectly squeezes everything together uniformly, and the bearing doesn't warp out on one side and start causing major problems. So that's good to go. Grab some tools and start tightening. Got a couple of spanners here, and I'm just going to slowly tighten these up until the bearings are in the frame. Now alternatively, what you can do is you can actually just press one bearing in at a time. So just do one side, then put the bearing in the other side, and then keep going. So here we go. So I've got them pretty close to being in. Basically what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to quickly take this off and make sure everything's aligned, and then keep going. Alright, so now as you can see, the bearings are flush into the bottom bracket now, so that's pretty much it. $5–10 tool made at a department store, and that's pretty much it. And there we have it. The bearing is all nicely pressed into the frame without using a hammer. So, fairly effective way of using a few bits and pieces from the department store. Those are the spacers that'll go on tomorrow when my crankset arrives. Cool, so that's it. Thank you for watching. Make sure you like and subscribe, all that kind of thing, if you want to see more content. Once this bike's together, I am going to be doing riding videos. I'm not very good, so basically you'll be watching me relearn stuff that I knew how to do 10 years ago. But I think it'll be fun, and it'll be good to show people out there that it doesn't matter what age you are or how big you are, you can still jump on a bike and have fun. So that's basically what this is all about. Thanks for watching.